Former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernandez has been released from a U.S. prison after being pardoned by President Donald Trump. Hernandez was serving a 45-year sentence in the U.S. for drug trafficking and firearms offenses. Trump has described the conviction as a Biden administration setup. Hernandez, who was in office from 2014 until 2022, has denied shipping some 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. Meanwhile, centrist candidate Salvador Nasralla has taken a slim lead in the Honduran presidential election. With nearly 70% of the votes counted, Nasralla stands about 13,000 votes ahead of his conservative rival, Nasry Asfura, who has been endorsed by Donald Trump. Trump has threatened to cut financial aid to Honduras if Asfura does not win. He's accused Honduran authorities of trying to change the election results. We asked journalist Fritz Pinau in the Honduran capital, Tegucigalpa, for the latest on the vote count.
So right now, there's only two frontrunners left, which is right now Salvador Nasralla from the Centrist Party and the Trump-endorsed right-wing candidate Nasry Asfura. Yesterday, Nasry Asfura was leading with a very, very narrow margin of 500 votes, about 500 votes. But today, Salvador Nasralla has taken the lead and has widened this gap. But with 70% of the votes counted, it still remains to be seen who will win, and the gap is just still remaining far too slim.
Have any irregularities been reported? Tell us a little bit more about that, because I mean that is one of the claims.
Yes, absolutely. So there have been some issues. So the transparency system, TREP, was down for several hours yesterday. But today, the National Electoral Council managed to trace this error back to a private company where they had outsourced some of their software. And since this issue has been resolved, and national news stations now get privileged access to the website. And so this way they can basically share in real time any kind of updates. And this would also reduce this bandwidth of millions of Honduras checking this one web page at the same time. So that's kind of the solution that they've figured out today. But the worry is still that if this gap between the two leading candidates if it remains so narrow and doesn't widen further, one of those two candidates might claim fraud. And what's concerning right now is that the third candidate, the leftist candidate, Rixi Moncada, was fallen far behind, that she has already declared that she will challenge the elections, and that her lack of success is due to a plot by those two parties. But she's tried to rally supporters yesterday for a protest in the capital, but it had to be canceled because she didn't manage to rally enough people. But then also just hours ago, there was a small riot with protesters waving the flags of her party in San Pedro Sula, but it was quickly squashed by police. But so it's still very unclear. But what we can really see is that Hondurans are still staying calm and hopeful and trust in the institutions that are currently managing the elections, and hope that it will remain peaceful.
Washington, meantime, is watching all of those developments that you've highlighted there quite closely. Tell us a little bit more, because Trump has promised consequences if, the, quote, wrong candidate wins the election. What exactly would those be?
So in this case, actually, we can see Trump, he positioned himself first. The centrist candidate who's leading the polls right now, Salvador Nasralla, he is no direct threat to the U.S. or U.S. policies, right? Rather the contrary. But Trump declared him something of a communist sympathizer because the centrist party made a deal with the leftist party in the last elections. But really, the centrist party is also planning to rekindle this relationship with the U.S., and Nasralla has also promised to crack down on gangs and drug trafficking, which aligns very much with U.S. international policies. But at this point, it's hard to say because Salvador Nasralla and the centrist party is a wild card in this, which goes to show that Hondurans are ready to try something new instead of, pivoting to China or U.S. or a U.S. relationship or a renegotiated
Okay.
U.S. relationship. But
We
it
have
just depends, like if Trump wants to work with the centrist party or the other way around.
We have to leave it there. Journalist Fritz Pinal, thank you so much.